Hello everyone, this is part 25 of What If Naruto Traveled Back in Time and Changed, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Konoha, 3 days after raid on Orochimaru's base. Task Force Anaconda appeared in a yellow flash outside of Konoha's gates and stunned the hell out of Izumo and Kotetsu. Kotetsu was reclining back in his chair with his head hanging back and drool dribbling down his left cheek. When the flash went off, he was instinctively startled and fell backwards in his chair, which earned a round of laughter from the newly arrived group. Izumo had been leaning against the guard shack and he startled so heavily that he gave himself whiplash. Recomposing himself, Izumo's eyes widened when he saw the group. Holy shit, Naruto, I will never, ever get used to that. Izumo said through his stupor. Kotetsu rose from behind the guard shack and saw a shit-eating grin on Naruto's face. He yawned sleepily and rubbed the bump on the back of his head. Damn it, Naruto. Did you have to put your beacon right outside the guard shack? Naruto chuckled and aired an eyebrow at the lazy duo. Maybe if you weren't napping it wouldn't startle you so much. Anyway, we are back, we have some guests prisoners. Mind calling the Anbu for us? Shisui piped in here, already have. Anbu tattoo, remember? Naruto scratched the back of his neck sheepishly, oh, yeah. Never been a part of the Corps. Kinda forgot about that. Tsunade ruffled Naruto's hair, it's okay kiddo. Leave a clone behind and sign us in. One of you two, will you notify the Hokkaigen Council of our return? Tell Itachi to call an emergency meeting. Izumo straightened up quick and snapped a salute, yes, Lady Tsunade. Why do they do that for you? They always throw a cheap jab at me when I sign in. Jiraiya pouted. Kotetsu suppressed a laugh and coughed, Lord Jiraiya, you typically don't sign in. And when you do, well, you always joke with us, so we return the favor. Naruto slapped a hand on Jiraiya's shoulder, yeah, Mr. Super Pervert Grandfather. You earned it. After a round of laughter from the task force, a group of Anbu and a couple civilians showed up at the front gate. Naruto had 2 Master Scrolls linked around his back from all of the items sealed. Jiraiya had an extra Master Scroll on top of his usual one, Tsunade had 2 and almost everyone else was carrying one as well. The sacking of Otogakure came with a lot of items sealed over the last 5 days. The victorious group handed off the prisoner and stasis scrolls to the Anbu forces and they enjoyed their victory lap as they walked through Konoha towards the Hokage Tower. They drew many looks and evidently some of the citizens had heard about their mission to Roto. Crowds began gathering around and asking questions, but they were repeatedly told that they would need to wait for the announcement from the Hokage. Guy, Kakashi, Kurenai and Asuma had come to join their previous teams after news had spread. They walked behind the young task force with proud looks on their faces and they decided to accompany them into the council chambers. By the time they entered, the joint council of Konoha was summoned once more. Naruto hated this big council, and he preferred the new council setup, but he figured not even this big council could hate on him now. Task Force Anaconda halted in the center of the council chambers and waited for the Hokage to address them. Naruto noticed that Madame Shijimi was holding her tablet facing outward and Naruto gave a quick wink to Kinji before turning his eyes back toward Itachi. The mutterings of the room quickly quieted, and Itachi rose from his Hokage chair. Welcome back, Task Force Anaconda. I have shared your overall victory with the council already, but I have not heard the results. Naruto Senju Uzumaki, please inform this council of what happened during your mission. Naruto bowed and began to address the council while Tsunade watched on with a proud smirk on her face. Objectives 1, 2 and 3 are all complete. We moved from Kumo and attacked Otogakure from the north. We used my Sage mode to locate enemy locations and shinobi. We encountered Orochimaru and his main base on the 3rd day after sacking nearly 20 of his labs and killing nearly 40 Oto shinobi. Naruto was forced to pause here as the mutterings of the council became too loud for him to speak in an inside voice. Itachi banged his gavel and the room quieted down. He then addressed the council, joint council, most of you are guests here. Please remain silent until I call for your opinions. The next person to disturb this meeting will be forced to leave and fined $1,000. Now, please continue, Naruto. Naruto flashed a smile toward Itachi. He truly appreciated his new control over the council. I sensed Orochimaru from a way out and I sensed multiple powerful chakra signatures moving toward his main base. It seems like he planned to ambush us, but we turned it around on him. I set up a total isolation barrier to lock the snake in. Task Force Anaconda proceeded to decimate over 300 enemy shinobi, which included Orochimaru, Kabuto, the last Kaguya and many others. There was a slight pause and Shikaku got approval to ask a question. Naruto, you said that was day 3. What have you been doing since then? Naruto answered with a smile, rather than leave a job half done, we completed our sweep of the land of rice paddies. We destroyed a total of 113 bases, and I don't care to think about the amount of enemy shinobi killed. I would rather tell this council that my task force saved the lives of over 1,000 civilians and other test subjects. We guided the survivors to the daimyo of Rice Country. Lord Kinji helped pressure him to provide shelter and safe passage to them. Thank you for that, Lord Kinji. Madam Shijimi chuckled, he said you are most welcome, my boy. Mikoto stood up, what of Sasuke? Naruto offered a sincere and understanding smile to Mikoto. Teams 7, 9 and 10 fought Sasuke. He was a fearsome opponent with the cursed seal of heaven that is level 2. My clone intervened when it looked like they were going to suffer casualties. Sasuke is currently in ANBU's care and was transported along with other shinobi of interest via stasis scroll. Mikoto's hands clasped over her mouth. Is he going to be okay? Tsunade took a step forward and joined Naruto. Medically, other than the effects of the cursed seal, he is fine. Psychologically, we will need to be careful moving forward. The first priority will be removing and containing the cursed seals. Orochimaru uses the seals as a form of immortality and body transfer. He places a piece of his soul in each seal and that has very negative effects. Itachi decided to help his mother. Tayuya, could you explain the cursed seal more and describe what it was like to be freed from it? Tayuya looked sheepish, but she stepped next to Naruto. Lord Hokage, that seal is a goddamn nightmare. It is like you are living on the edge of an abyss and the slightest tip of your emotions drags you into it. When you are in the abyss, you watch yourself do things you wouldn't normally do. It perverts your desires and corrupts your soul. Mikoto started crying here and Tayuya's tone softened. Once I was free from it, I felt like myself for the first time in years. Orochimaru put the seal on me when I was 10. I used it often until Naruto removed it from me when I was 14. I believe Sasuke, and the others, will be okay, but the seal needs to be removed before you could possibly consider fixing anything else. Everyone looked with pity towards Mikoto and Itachi. Itachi shook himself out of his despair and addressed Naruto. Will you be able to remove it safely? Naruto smirked confidently, with my new Sage mode, it will be even easier than before. I didn't do it in the field because there were other priorities, and he was safe in a stasis scroll. Itachi nodded, very well, I will now open the floor with questions. Civilians will be asked to hold their questions seeing as this is a shinobi matter. Hiashi stood up, you said you have other shinobi, why did you save them? Naruto shrugged, I saved an Uzumaki with a powerful sensory ability called the Eye of Kaguya. I saved a crystal release user, a man that can enter Sage mode naturally named Jugo, a male from the Hozuki clan and a couple others. As you can see, each person could bring value to Konoha. If not voluntarily, then by force if necessary. Hiruzen perked up at the mention of an Uzumaki. You found a true Uzumaki. Naruto stiffened slightly, yes, Karen Uzumaki. I felt her chakra and know it to be true. After checking the family registry, the is the daughter of my mother's cousin. And what is your plan for her? Hiruzen followed up. Family above all, always and forever. Naruto answered simply, which earned groans from the council. For those of you that don't know, I am the heir to daimyo of the land of eddies and land of waves. Karen will be offered the chance to return to her homeland and join my family. More groans from the council until someone shouted, what? So, you are just going to abandon Konoha? Itachi made a hand signal and Anbu dragged the man out by the collar of his shirt. Still, the question had been asked and Naruto needed to announce his intentions sooner or later. Naruto flashed into his golden sage mode and looked around at the shinobi and civilians gathered. I abandon nobody. I am honoring my ancestors by accepting the responsibility of the daimyo role. I am rebuilding my homeland and Wave has requested annexation upon my 21st birthday. I will serve Konoha as a shinobi until then. For those of you that weren't there the first time I said this, I will say it again. If you think you can control me, you can't. If you think you can manipulate me, you can't. If you think I will be contained to Konoha, you are delusional. If you dare harm those I love, I offer nothing but death. Alas, if you stay out of my way, I will make Konoha thrive along with the rest of our allies. I will help the elemental nations move out of its current cycle and upon my 21st birthday, I will do so from Uzushiogakure. Naruto's chakra was warm, and his feelings were conveyed openly through it. The weight of his chakra added emphasis and conviction to every word. Silence followed his statement and Naruto could feel a variety of emotions. Some felt betrayed, some felt sad, some felt repentant and there was a significant amount of greed and lust. It disgusted Naruto and he really wanted to get out of this joint council. It wasn't necessary to move things forward. Itachi stood and looked around the council chamber. Understand this. Naruto is under my protection, the daimyo's protection and the protection of our allies. It was on Lord Kinji's insistence that he revive Uzushiogakure. Why would you let our strongest shinobi leave the village? Someone shouted and got murmurs of approval before that person was dragged out of the chamber. Itachi flared his chakra and activated his Sharingan. Silence. It is fools like that man that are the reason the Senju clan will leave Konoha. More shouts before Itachi flared up even more and Anbu got involved. Shut the F up. You are guests in my council chambers. You were called here to listen to a mission report. Nothing more, nothing less. You will keep your mouths shut during my proceedings. In fact, Anbu, please escort the civilians aside from the core council out of the chambers. I am through with them. Task Force Anaconda and many shinobi watched on with an obvious amusement as the so-called, influential, civilian family heads were escorted from the council chambers while protesting loudly. After 10 minutes, a blessed silence overtook the council chambers once more and everyone took a second to recenter themselves. Finally, Itachi spoke once more. Now, there is more to be covered. What did the Rice Daimyo have to say about our activities in Rice Country? Madam Shijimi spoke up here, he was forced to sanction it. Between wind, lightning, fire and wave, he had no alternative. He has signed an agreement not to harbor another shinobi village for the next 10 years. He is free to contract with other shinobi villages, but he cannot harbor his own force other than a samurai contingent. What of Orochimaru's remains? Hiruzen asked, feeling slightly guilty about the death of his old pupil. Jiraiya giggled, Heim smashed him. Wasn't much left and all that was left was incinerated. Tsunade locked eyes with Hiruzen, I fought Orochimaru. He didn't even last 15 minutes. I should also mention that I killed Manda and 2 of his oldest children also died to our task force. Anko spoke up here, I will have to go to Raichi Cave and speak with the White Snake Sage to figure out the snake summoning contract moving forward. Sasuke also has the snake contract, but after he used his Sharingan on the snake summons, I doubt he will remain a summoner. Itachi nodded, very well. When that happens, I will expect a status update. Chooser Akamaki spoke up next, were there any casualties on the task force? Tsunade fielded this question, all injuries were treatable in the field. After the amount of shinobi we faced and traps we triggered, it was inevitable. That being said, every member made it back in full health. Chooser retook his seat and Inoki stood. Naruto, I will call you to Tandi tomorrow to remove the seals. What is your assessment of the prisoners? Guren will be your biggest challenge. For reasons unknown, she was loyal to Orochimaru. They will each require extensive counseling and screening. Jugo is a safety risk and will need to be sealed until I can develop a seal to help him control his natural energy. You will also have to partner with the hospital because each of Orochimaru's followers were given a variety of strength-enhancing drugs. In time, I believe they are all convertible or usable given enough time. Naruto answered. After fielding some more questions from the clan heads, Itachi was going to bring the meeting to a close when Naruto spoke up. Lord Hokage, I request an audience with you and Lord Hiashi. I have uncovered sensitive information that I need to discuss with you too. Very well, the council is dismissed. Hiashi, are you free? Itachi asked. Hiashi nodded formally, yes, Lord Hokage. Itachi, Hiashi, Naruto, Jiraiya and soon had moved into the Hokage's office and Naruto set up the privacy barrier for the group. They each got comfortable before Naruto spoke. Hisashi is under my protection and is residing in Azushiogakure. Naruto said, which earned faces of stunned disbelief. Hiashi, whose professional visage had completely collapsed, stuttered out, say what? Flashback, first morning of Snake Hunt. The clone Naruto formed while meditating moved out toward the two signatures he had sensed. They were in the mountains of Lightning Country, and they were heading towards Kumo. That meant that Naruto needed to get involved and stop them before anything else happened. The clone masked its presence by coating itself in nature chakra and closed the distance between his two quarries. The clone continued to observe the two all day and watched as they scanned Kumo from a couple miles out. Naruto had already written to Ai and told him that he was tailing to Akatsuki. He told him to keep B and Yugito in the city and have a quick response squad ready for a signal. Ai had reluctantly agreed, and Naruto had informed his clone by quickly dispelling one clone. Finally, night settled on the two and the Naruto wood clone tracked them to a cave. He waited for a moment to ambush the two and sank into the ground without leaving a trace. Kisame liked fighting strong opponents and he joined the Akatsuki for that express purpose. He hadn't been disappointed thus far, but he sincerely hated always sleeping on the ground. He enjoyed having Hisashi with him because the range of the dude's Byakugan was insane and basically guaranteed that they couldn't be sneaked up on. Plus, the Hyuga was super polite, especially for a missing ninja. All in all, Kisame admitted that he had the best partner in the Akatsuki, and he trusted Hisashi, at least a little bit. Kisame took the second shift, which meant that he got to rest his weary eyes. He hated Kumo because he was in high altitude and the mountains didn't have much water. Therefore, he ended the day feeling dehydrated and exhausted. He lay in his sleeping bag with Samehada by his side. The shark skin sword snuggled into him and enjoyed snacking on his chakra overnight. Then, he was startled awake as strong wooden bindings lashed over his body and constricted him tightly. What the F? Kisame shouted. Scree. Samehada screeched as the golden wood clone placed its hand on Samehada. Kisame watched on in horror as Samehada ceased writhing and turned into stone. The sword was the greatest creation of Kirigakure and it had its own independent chakra system. That was why Kisame couldn't understand what was happening. Why was Samehada not simply absorbing the chakra? The Naruto clone left the sword in a stony state and placed its hand on Kisame's head. Kisame screamed as an unfamiliar energy entered his system. It overloaded his coils in a strange way and for the briefest instant, he felt more powerful. However, his body couldn't use this chakra and he watched on in morbid fascination as his fingers, toes, hands and feet began turning into stone. Then, the clone was forced to release its hold on Kisame as Hisashi came blurring forward with hands glowing with chakra. The clone dodged as it formed the snake seal and Kisame screamed as the wooden bindings turned thorny and tightened around him. Between the petrification of his hands and feet and the pain of the wooden thorns, Kisame could barely track the fight that was raging around the cave. He breathed out a sigh of sweet release when the wood stopped constricting and he was simply left immobilized. He sent the emergency signal through his ring and hoped that help would arrive in time. Hisashi struggled in his fight against the wood clone, and he could tell that the clone was guiding the fight outside of the cave. This was his first contact with Naruto since he left the village, so he decided to go along with it because he could tell the clone was holding back on him. Then, the clone grabbed him and literally chucked him to the mountain that was adjacent to the current one and Hisashi was no longer sure that Naruto was holding back. The Naruto clone smirked devilishly as he watched the black cloak sail across the gap between mountains and slam into it. He winced at the size of the indent and force of the impact, but it simply shrugged its shoulders before flashing over to Hisashi. The clone appeared above Hisashi with a palm extended and Hisashi couldn't fully dodge the impact of the clone's hand. He felt his body begin to stiffen before it locked up completely and he was caught in wooden bindings. How long do we have to talk before the fake Madara shows up in his spacetime jutsu? Naruto asked. Hisashi breathed a sigh of relief knowing that Naruto wasn't going to kill him. If Kisame activated the ring, then it could only be a minute or two. Naruto nodded, Do you wish to leave the Akatsuki and have a chance to reconnect with your son? Hisashi didn't even hesitate before his stoic facade cracked and nodded eagerly. Yes, I believe I have enough information. The Naruto clone nodded sadly. Okay then, this is gonna hurt. The ring is the connection to the Akatsuki, right? Hisashi nodded with a hesitant look on his face. I'll be as quick as possible. The Naruto clone activated the wooden bindings through the snake seal and thorny vines pierced Hisashi all over in non-vital places. Naruto acted quickly and severed the finger that held the Akatsuki ring, and he ripped the Akatsuki cloak off of Hisashi. He then used a wide-scale, Mokuton, violent deep forest emergence, which covered the mountain in viney trees. The trees avoided Hisashi, who looked confused by the display. Then, 10 clones sprouted around the pair and began having a crazy fight that began making craters and devastating the mountain. Pieces of the cloak were scattered everywhere, and the mountain looked as if a terrifying battle took place before a golden flash illuminated the dark of the mountain. Then, massive fireballs were shot into the air and toward the mountain that held Kisame. This was Kumo's cue to send the quick reaction force and the clones dispelled themselves. Hisashi opened his eyes as he heard the sound of the sea and he realized that he was in an oceanside home that looked out over the island and ocean. He looked at the clone, who offered him a simple smile as its hands glowed green and the warm comfort of the healing chakra encompassed his wounds. Hisashi soaked in the healing chakra, and he was content to wait for Naruto to begin the conversation. So, Hisashi, I guess I should start by telling you I am a wood clone. Hisashi blinked, and then blinked again, before his eyes went wide in disbelief. You bested 2S rank shinobi, and you are a wood clone. The Naruto clone simply shrugged and kept healing Hisashi. He grabbed Hisashi's right hand and made him wince as the clone began regrowing his finger. Boss gave me Kurama's chakra and I can enter my full sage mode. To be fair, I also ambushed Kisame, and you weren't really trying to fight me. Hisashi nodded dumbly before snapping out of it. You said I could reconnect with Neji and that I could leave the Akatsuki. Could you explain that for me? The clone chuckled as it kept at its work. Boss is the daimyo of these lands. He has already talked with Lord Kinji and Lord Hoto. They will grant your pardon in return for your service as an undercover agent. The clone paused its healing and reached into the pockets of its pants and pulled out the sealing scroll and letter. This will let you connect with your son. When the time is right, like when I get back to the village, I will bring Neji here. Hisashi began shedding tears as his white eyes watered over and went misty. Thank you. The clone shrugged before resuming its healing. Don't thank me, thank the boss. He felt super bad this whole time that he couldn't help you. That being said, if you could write up an intelligence report, that would be appreciated. Hisashi nodded. Yes, Lord Senju. The clone visibly cringed. None of that nonsense, Hisashi. It is just Naruto. We just need to know what is going on in Omegacore and Iwagacore. Also, how are Pain and Conan doing? Hisashi seemed shocked by that. How do you know the leader and his angel? The clone laughed. Secret. Anyway, I know the leader because he is a cousin of mine, and I had a chat with him a couple years back. Conan was also in on that conversation. Anyway, any updates on Akatsuki before I dispel and let boss know? Hisashi looked down at the ground. They caught and sealed the 3 tails. It was completely under their thumb and they are ready to move. They also have 10,000 white Zetsu clones that they can use to attack. The plant monsters can copy any chakra signature that they absorb. The first target is Suna, after Deidara and Sasori capture the 1 tail. The Naruto clone was shocked. Are they moving on Gaara already? Hisashi shrugged. Our last meeting was 3 days ago. We were told to scout Kumo and their Jinchuriki and Deidara and Sasori were sent to Suna. The clone nodded. All right, I am going to dispel and let the boss know. End of flashback. It was Hisashi that spoke first. Why did you never tell me of your arrangement with Hisashi? Naruto shrugged. Why would I make you a traitor by proxy? I have immunity and it is within my rights as a daimyo to pardon him. I have already spoken to Lord Kinji and Lord Hoto, and they agreed to pardon him. I simply took advantage of this opportunity to extract him. Itachi coughed. Look, the Hyuga business is important, but you are telling me that you took out Kisame Hoshigaki, the strongest of the 7 swordsmen of the mist, with a wood clone. Naruto sighed. No, sadly I did not. I thought I had him tied up and that Kumo would collect him, but Madara showed up and extracted him. Then a feral smirk graced Naruto's face. Although, he isn't nearly as much of a threat without his precious sword. Tsunade laughed, which made Itachi ask another question. How did you disable his sword though? Won't the effect wear off? Naruto laughed with Tsunade and Jiraiya, which made Itachi look around in confusion. Well, any sage would know that natural energy poisoning isn't reversible, especially with a sword that only has a simplistic chakra network. It is basically a stone club now. Itachi sighed and rubbed his temples. Why didn't you just kill him? Naruto stopped laughing abruptly, because I want the Akatsuki to fear me. I want them to feel hunted. I want them to know that only death awaits them at the end of the current path. I simply didn't feel like dealing with a chakra-eating sword that is a cheat code. Plus, this was an alibi for Hisashi, and I can finally live up to my promise to Neji. Hisashi bowed low to Naruto. Lord Senju, thank you for taking care of my brother. Hisashi then rose and bowed toward the Hokage. Lord Hokage, could you please allow Neji a week of leave so that he may reconnect with his father? Itachi nodded over his folded hands. Yes, I will allow it. Naruto, I know you know that he can't come back to Konoha. It would cause far too many issues. Naruto nodded. I know. I have allied the Uzumaki and Senju clans to the Hyuga clan. Now, we just have to negotiate a start to the Azu branch of the Hyuga clan. Hisashi looked confused at Naruto. Come again. He said in startled confusion. Tsunade stepped in. We are going to harbor Hisashi. He can still find a second wife and start the Hyuga clan. If Neji is allowed to transfer once the island is up and running, then we will be able to start a Hyuga branch. We wanted to be upfront with our intentions to the Hyuga clan. Hisashi looked lost in thought before he slowly nodded. That will do for now. We can't do anything official until he is pardoned. When the time comes, we will form a stronger bond between our clans. I have already approved the Suna branch, so one more won't matter. Itachi, Tsunade and Jiraiya looked at him for further explanation. I approve the engagement of my daughter Hinata to Subaku no Gaara. Sunagakure no Sato 1 a.m., same evening of Task Force Anaconda's return. Sasori and Deidara were finally attempting their infiltration of Sunagakure. Sasori had to develop new, subconscious methods of mind control in order to get a spy in. Then, it was only good for a one-time use before the spy was caught. It was infuriating and it made it nearly impossible to discover a new way into the city. Yura, the last agent Sasori had, finally managed to add their chakra signatures to the detection barrier. This was the only real chance they had to accomplish their mission. Deidara, this is no time for theatrics. We are going into an enemy stronghold, and we need to extract the Ichibi Jinchuriki. According to our reports, he is much stronger than us in the desert terrain. Sasori, my man, I got this handled. You just keep the Kazekage off me. This will be a blast. The straw-haired man answered. Well, I will set up the summoning beacon once we enter Suna. This is a one-shot seal that will give us 20 reinforcements. Then, I will engage the Kazekage. You draw the Jinchuriki into the sky. The hunchbacked man countered. It sounds like a blast, Arn. I will finally get to show everyone my art, Arn. Deidara said excitedly as he formed his clay bird that would fly him over the walls of Suna. The two infiltrated over the massive bowl-style walls that protected Suna, and Sasori's eyes would have widened in shock if he weren't a puppet. There was so much green in Suna that it amazed him, but he didn't have time to appreciate the scenery. Deidara's bird was already having to dodge multiple projectile weapons that were being enhanced with wind ninjutsu. It seems like they knew we were coming, Arn. Deidara shouted as he dodged another volley of high-speed metal instruments. Sasori growled before jumping off of the clay bird. I will handle them, you go accomplish your task. Sasori landed in front of the defenders that occupied the wall. Lay down your weapons and give up. Asuna Jonan, leader of the guard, shouted. A big, metallic tail lashed out from the man's cloak and was inches away from bisecting Asuna ninja when a blue barrier shimmered to life and blocked the strike. Asuna Kunoiki with purple markings on her face was holding her hands out and the group thanked her for blocking the attack. The fight on the wall continued and Sasori was repeatedly surprised by the new tactics of his village, which were effective enough in delaying him from his mission. As the alarms sounded across Suna, Sand Shinobi blurred around the city and took up the defensive positions. Barriers were erected by squads of sand shinobi, and purple barriers formed defensive boxes over the evacuation shelters and high-value buildings. There were also shinobi heading to the taller rooftops as Deidara flew over the city. As for the mad bomber of Iwa, he was frustrated, and he was sending down clay swallows that dive-bombed the barriers. He shouted in anger and frustration as the birds had no effect on the barriers that were being erected all over the city. That was when he was forced to dodge through an insanely dense volley of sand and golden weapons. He continued to fly as he saw two figures rise into the sky on a sand cloud and a gold cloud. Gaara's head snapped to the battle on the wall as an explosion went off. "Father, I will handle this one. I have more sand at my disposal, which will aid me in this battle. Please go protect our comrades and eliminate the other intruder." If Naruto was right, it should be Sasori of the Red Sands. Raza looked unsure, but after looking at the determination on his son's face, he nodded. "I will, my son, be safe. I am proud of the fine man you have become." Gaara nodded slightly as his eyes locked back onto Deidara. "Kankuro should summon Naruto here. I have instructed him to play a defensive role and to let us handle our enemies. Suna doesn't need my brother to protect it anymore." As Raza flew away, he couldn't help but shake his head. "Bring victory to Suna, my son." Gaara sped up his sand cloud and began leaking sand out of the seal on his wrists and back. "Mother and Shukaku, it is time to put our skills to the test. I am counting on each of you," he thought into his seal. Shukaku let out an excited and powerful screech. "We got this, Gaara. Nobody attacks our home and gets away with it. Be safe, my son, I will handle the defense," Korura said through the seal. Gaara's aura flared, and a violent sandstorm chased through the air toward Deidara. As Gaara spun and controlled the wind and sands on his sand cloud, thoughts of Hinata flickered through his mind. Thoughts of the people of Suna and all of the bonds he has in this village invigorated him and lit a fiery determination behind his emerald eyes. Gaara's dance intensified and volley after volley of sand shurikens and sand arrows sailed through the air towards Deidara. Deidara was moving at high speeds, and he couldn't believe that the Suna Jinchuriki was able to keep up with him. He was putting so much effort into dodging the infinite sand attacks that he had little time to counterattack. His first real counterattack was ready as his clay bird barrel rolled over yet another volley of shuriken, and Deidara released handfuls of miniature spiders that dropped through the air towards Gaara's position. Deidara held up a half-ram seal with his right hand and yelled, "Katsu," with a tone of merriment. Gaara saw the spiders and waved a hand in front of himself as he spun and used his right hand to form the next volley of sand weapons. Immediately, a sand wall sprouted midair and caught all of the miniature spiders before they could get close to Gaara. He didn't even feel the air pressure from the explosions as his sand completely blocked the paltry attack. Gaara's left hand shot forward violently and a volley of sand spears blanketed the night skies. Gaara followed this up by taking a deep breath, pulling on Shukaku's chakra and blowing out a wind style great breakthrough. Deidara screeched in frustration and fear as a sand spear took the wing off of his clay bird and he began diving. Deciding not to waste the clay, Deidara guided the dive towards Gaara before he jumped off his bird and formed a new one in midair. The new bird leveled out before flying into the air away from a massive explosion that lit up the night sky above Suna. As he was climbing, Deidara turned around and sucked his teeth when he saw a ball of sand protecting the Jinchuriki from the explosion. "What do I have to do to get through that sand, Arn?" Deidara shouted. Having created enough space, Deidara thrust his hands back into his pouches to form his next attack. With Raza, he arrived at the fight that originated on the wall and it hand moved into a more open part on the border of Suna. He was proud to see his shinobi holding the enemy at bay, but he was worried by the 15 to 20 shinobi he saw laying around the battle area. All in all, his shinobi were holding on but needed desperate help. Thus, Raza took advantage of his element of surprise, and created 10 gold spears that hovered over his shoulders. Seeing an opening in the battle, he let them loose. 10 golden spears descend from above and created a massive sand screen as they impacted the ground all around the enemy. Raza descended with a golden yari, a spear-like weapon with an elongated blade, in hand and slashed at the attacker. His gold clashed against a steel tail before Raza flipped over the appendage as it lashed out. Raza landed and conjured a gold screen to block the volley of poisonous senbon that were heading his way. Kankuro watched his father enter the battle and he immediately moved into a support position behind him. He unsealed Kurisu, ant, crow and 2 knights that carried big, reinforced shields. His puppets moved into flanking positions around his father and Raza couldn't help but smirk at the thought of fighting side by side with his son. Barrier teams, now. Raza shouted as a barrier sprung up around Raza, Kankuro and Sasori. Sasori scowled at the thought of being trapped in a barrier. His main puppet body was fine, but Hiroko was shredded from the earlier gold spears. He watched Raza twirl the yari as puppets flanked him. Big mistake, Kazekage. You will not be the first Kazekage I have killed. Raza laughed, come on out of the puppet body and fight us. You aren't going anywhere until you get through me. Sasori disassembled Hiroku in its emergency release and a small, redhead teenage boy emerged. Upon closer inspection, the tousled redhead's body was puppet-like and composed of wood. A scroll popped into its hand and audible gasps sounded as the third Kazekage appeared in puppet form. The legendary third Kazekage took up position in front of Sasori and the dreaded iron sand began leaking out of a seal on the puppet. Despicable. Raza snarled, before slightly turning his head to Kankuro and whispering, look for an opening. Don't rush and don't expose yourself. Sasori decided to open the attack and a wave of iron sand soaked in a purple poison crashed against a wall of golden sand. Sasori was forced to dodge as Kurisu attacked from his left flank with a massive stream of fire. As Sasori leaped over the stream of fire, Ant came hurtling at him and tackled him. This disrupted his control over the iron sand, and he snarled as a volley of golden shuriken sailed at him. Sasori twitched the chakra thread on his fingers and the golden shuriken was stopped by a wall of iron sand before a spear of iron was launched towards Ant. A puppet with a big shield moved forward and blocked the spear before Sasori was forced to dodge out of a volley of senbon from Kurisu. Sasori watched in amazement as the volley of senbon remained sustained as they soared through a hole in his iron wall created by the golden dust. All in all, Sasori was forced to fight a defensive battle and it remained in a state of high-speed combat for over 15 minutes. The barrier teams remained aware, and Sasori wondered why they didn't drop the barrier to support their Kazekage. Sure, Raza didn't really need the help, but fighting in this contained space wasn't Sasori's style. The father-son duo proved more than a match for him as multiple scuffs and a couple holes riddled his puppet body. Back in the sky, Gaara and Deidara had been engaged in a dogfight. It was frustrating for Gaara, and he was starting to get bored. The multitude of explosions that were all blocked and countered by Gaara's sand infuriated the blonde Akatsuki member and Gaara couldn't stop a bemused smile from the blonde's explicative speech. That being said, Gaara had used the opportunity to lace the air with his sand and he was ready to spring his trap. Deidara was ready to go to the big guns. After so much of his art was shrugged off, he could no longer stand the embarrassment and degradation of his art. Deidara pulled over half of the clay remaining out of his pouches and shoved it into his mouth. As he was chewing on the clay and shaping his ultimate jutsu, his eyes widened as he was surrounded on every side by marble-sized balls of sand that were floating in the air. He looked in a state of stunned disbelief toward the Suna Jinchuriki and saw the smirk on his face. Gaara spread his arms open wide with all of his fingers spread. He then brought his hands together and intertwined his fingers in a quick motion. As if moved by divine winds, the minefield of marbled sand crashed into Deidara on all sides. There was nothing left of his bird as it looked like the victim of an overzealous hunter that just unloaded every shell in the shotgun on a simple dove. As for Deidara, he had hardened his skin with a quick earth jutsu, but each of those marbles hit him with devastating effect. His arms were bleeding all over as multiple marbles impaled and exploded in his body, his legs were shredded as he fell through the air, but the important thing was Deidara's torso was intact. Deidara vomited up a big, fat clay version of himself and cackled through a mouthful of blood. Gaara sensed the buildup of chakra and his eyes widened as the clay creation enlarged further and began to glow as it hurtled toward Suna. Gaara also saw a flock of high-speed clay birds flying towards him, which meant he had to work on two fronts. Gaara roared as he crouched and brought his right hand up in a bowl while his left hand shot forward in a stop gesture. Sand from the floor of Suna answered his call and formed a pillar of sand that began forming a defensive bowl that covered Suna from the falling clay bomb. Smaller explosions lit the night sky before a massive explosion sent shockwaves rippling into the defensive barriers through the defensive sand jutsu that Gaara formed. The massive sand construct remained upright despite the violent explosion that the giant bowl had angled into the air. The shattering sound dispersed as quick as it came, and an unsettling quiet settled over the skies of Suna. Gaara was panting and down on a knee as the effort of his exertion stressed his chakra coils and stamina. His left hand was still extended outward, and a figure was hovering towards him on a small cloud of sand. The figure was bleeding all over, his arms and legs flayed like a ragdoll with its strings cut at his sides, and he was cursing weakly under his breath. Sand fell out of the sky and showered Suna as Gaara brought his enemy closer and stood to his feet on his sand cloud. You were, are, and always will be a pitiful opponent. Your explosions could never penetrate the ultimate defense of Sunagakure, Gaara said after regaining his breath and strength. Shukaku was working internally to provide strength and support to Gaara's strained chakra coils. The blonde Akatsuki member stopped his incessant rambling and glared at Gaara. This isn't over, Ichibi Jinchuriki. After all, art is an explosion. The insane shout and glowing figure of the man alarmed Gaara, and he immediately covered the man in his sand. He kept piling on as much as he could call upon when a brilliant light escaped through cracks in the sand. Following the light was a bone-shattering and brain-shaking explosion that broke through Gaara's sand as if it were tissue paper. The explosion lit up the night sky above Suna once more in a brilliant white glow, and the visage of a mother cradling her arms protectively over a bundle flashed in the night sky. The intense fight between Sasori, Raza and Kankuro was intense, but a moment of distraction allowed Sasori to take advantage of the opportunity. As gold fought against iron, Sasori extended his right hand and latched a chakra thread onto the disposed metal tail of the Hiroku puppet. With strength and speed that would astound anybody that didn't know Suna's puppet techniques, the tail sailed through the arm and nearly severed Raza's arm at the bicep. Raza cursed as his right arm cried out in pain, but Raza didn't hesitate even for a second. A blade of gold formed in his left hand, and he severed his arm just below the head of the humorist before he plugged the wound with gold dust. His supporters cried out in distress as their Kazekage was injured and now at a significant disadvantage. Raza's brief distraction meant that 4 iron spears were heading straight for him, and there was nothing he could do about it. Kankuro immediately called the 2 knights into defensive positions in front of his father, and the 4 spears echoed against shields before Kankuro used his left hand to activate a hidden function of Black Ant. With a sad look on his face, despite the extreme focus and beads of sweat, Kankuro sacrificed Black Ant to neutralize the threat. Kankuro activated the seal on Black Ant's chest that created a powerful implosion that sucked in everything around it for 10 meters. Sasori's eyes widened as the 3rd Kazekage was swallowed by a black sphere that immediately compressed into itself. He had never seen such a technique, and he was startled by the loss of his puppet. As he was reaching for his scroll that contained his 100 puppets technique, Sasori was encased in a massive wave of gold dust. Before he could break free, he heard the last words that he would ever hear: Golden Mausoleum. As soon as the hardened golden pyramid ended the battle against Sasori by sealing him away, the barrier fell, and medical support poured in for the wounded Kazekage. Turns out, Raza and Kankuro slumped over in exhausting, and they both had minor wounds that were leaking the powerful neurotoxin that Sasori used to coat his weapons. As the medics were doing their thing, one Suna Jonin took charge. Baki barked out orders: Yoshimaru, go and summon Naruto Senju. He should have been here already. Yes sir, Yoshimaru answered before adding, it was Kankuro's duty to summon Naruto. Baki face-palmed himself. Kankuro was such an excitable boy, and he forgot to summon their strongest ally to a fight where he was needed. Now, their Kazekage was wounded and poisoned. Just go, Yoshimaru. Send him an emergency message to bring Tsunade and other medical personnel. At that moment, Gaara landed from his sand cloud to the cheers of the Suna shinobi. He saw the downed form of his father and Kankuro before he demanded an explanation from Baki. When Baki told him that Kankuro joined the fight before summoning Naruto, Gaara too facepalmed and cursed his brother's forgetfulness. Finally, he took charge and helped Baki direct the Suna shinobi. Himitsu, create scout squads and sweep the city. Tode, get with the barrier corps and have them search for any foreign chakra signatures. Mayuri, get the hospital ready for a mass casualty situation. Baki, I leave the perimeter sweep to you and a platoon of your choice. Gaara shouted out orders, and a stunned and silent respect fell over the crowd before they were spurred into action. Minutes later, Tsunade, Temari, Naruto and Hinata appeared in a flash next to Gaara, and Naruto immediately hugged his brother before he chastised him. You should have called me, Barker Broa. Gaara leaned into Naruto's supportive hug and appreciated the chakra boost that he was receiving. I know, Ruto. It was Kankuro's job, but he prioritized fighting Sasori with my father over summoning you. Naruto chuckled, that's Kankuro. Gaara sighed as Naruto released the hug and a pale-eyed princess jumped into his arms. I know, I will assign another person I trust to that duty. Gaara then turned his attention to a distressed Hinata, which prompted Naruto to walk away. Tsunade was running diagnostics on Raza and Kankuro, and she looked up as Naruto approached. Any chance your sage mode can remove this poison? Naruto shrugged, you know I am a decent medic at best, Mama. We have poisoned weapons lying all over the place. Baki, which weapon poisoned Raza and Kankuro? Baki looked over from the squad of dust he was giving instructions to. The big metal tail for the Kazekage and Kankuro got hit by some of the iron sand of Lord Third. Gotcha, Naruto answered nonchalantly before turning to Tsunade. I will place them in medical stasis to buy you time. If you need me to grow anything, let me know. Tsunade nodded. Hinata, work with the Suna medics to get these two to the hospital. Then, you will report to the labs to help me identify this poison and develop an antidote. Temari, why don't you work with Gaara to get order restored here? Temari's worried face offered Tsunade a weak smile. Will do, Mama. 2 days later, Suna Hospital. Raza cracked his eyes open and winced at the harsh white light that he instantly associated with a hospital room. After his eyes adjusted, Raza noticed that Pakura was sleeping at his bedside along with Temari, and he saw a Suna nurse looking over charts at the foot of a medical bed next to his. Raza saw that Kankuro was sleeping in the bed next to his, and his heart froze in anticipation. Through a parched throat, Raza croaked. Excuse me, miss, is my son going to be okay? The nurse turned and offered him a genuine smile. Lord Kazekage, it is good to see you awake. Kankuro has been given the same antidote that you have. He has stabilized, and Lady Senju is in charge of your care. You will both be fine, well, aside from your arm. Raza winced as phantom pain shot up his right shoulder, and he sighed when he saw that nothing was connected to the shoulder other than a stump. He brought his left hand to his face and leaned his head back into the pillow. Thank you, miss. Is Gaara okay? Yes, Lord Kazekage. Lord Gaara killed Deidara the Mad Bomber and protected everyone from that giant explosion. He is currently working as the Kazekage while you were indisposed. She answered. The noise of the conversation stirred Temari awake, and she instantly lunged into a hug and embraced her father. I am so glad you're okay, Dad. Raza winced in pain before he used his left arm and pulled Temari into an embrace and smiled against the top of her head. I will be fine, kiddo. What have I missed? Temari backed away from the hug and took on a more professional manner. Lady Tsunade and Hinata worked to create the antidote. They have administered it to the squads that initially held off Sasori. There were 10 dead, but we have stabilized 8 and the remaining injuries were minor. Gaara fought Deidara in single combat and won, but the crazy F blew himself up, so there is no body. Gaara stopped most of the damage to the city, and we have secured the village and surrounding area. Raza nodded. Very good. What about Suna since the fight? Temari smiled. Brother has stepped into the role of Kazekage. He is working with Naruto to repair any damages and secure the village. Lord Hoto is here and offering his support. Konoha also sent over 4 squads to help provide added security, and we have them rotating on watch duty. They also donated a couple medical personnel to aid in treating the wounded. Raza smiled at that. It was good to have allies. Very good. Raza was cut off as Naruto and Gaara entered the room with massive smiles on their faces. Naruto let Gaara take the lead. Father, it is good to see you awake. How are you feeling? Raza groaned. Like I went off on a week-long bender and I just woke up to the hangover. Naruto belted out a laugh and settled into a gigawatt smile. The laugh stirred Kankuro awake with a groan, and he groaned louder when Naruto slapped his foot playfully. Papa Raza, everything is fine. Just listen to Mama and get better. I am working on a project with the puppet core to get you a new and improved right arm. Raza's groan transitioned to a chuckle at the radiant positivity of Naruto. Thanks, Ruto. I would appreciate that. Raza turned his attention to Gaara. Anything I need to be made aware of? Gaara shrugged and replied in monotone, I have things handled for now, father. I am sure there will be a council meeting once people hear that you are awake. Raza groaned once more, can you handle that for your old man? This question earned understanding chuckles from those around the room. Yes, father, I can. Gaara answered monotonously with a gentle smile on his face. Kankuro took this opportunity to chime in, is Sasori dead? Temari answered, yes, father sealed him away in his golden mausoleum. Kankuro's celebration was halted when he thought of Black Ant. Ah, man, I had to sacrifice Black Ant. Gaara's snide remark drew snickers from everyone in the room. Yeah, well, maybe if you called Naruto as planned, he could have stepped in. Tell me, brother, why didn't you summon Naruto before joining father's battle? Kankuro rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly and refused to look anybody in the eye. Yeah, well, about that, I kinda forgot. A sand hand clapped Kankuro upside his head before Raza halted any further humiliation of Kankuro. Gaara, it is not a bad thing for Suna to defend itself. Ruto's help is appreciated, but we can't expect him to fight all our battles for us. Gaara resealed his sand and it was Naruto's turn to look sheepish, but it was Temari that spoke. You men and your stupid pride. There is no shame asking for help against ranked opponents while trying to protect your people. Ruto loves Suna as much as Konoha and he is just as much a part of our village as any of us. Temari's flaring temper cowed the two Subaku men and Gaara was just watching with his arms crossed over his chest. Raza put up his single hand in a defensive gesture while Kankuro was hiding behind his two hands. I am sorry, sis. I saw people dying and dad needed help, so I forgot, okay. It won't happen again. Temari's rage fizzled out and she sighed deeply. Alright, well, get some rest and we will be back tomorrow. With that, the visitors left Raza and Kankuro to get some much needed rest as their bodies healed from an intense fight and a severe turned mild case of deadly poison. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.